Do you see a certification requirement that airports need to prove they are compliant?
Alex, very good question. I would say from self-serving purposes that we would absolutely welcome that. I think that's critical for passenger safety, that information, that airports meet a certain standard. Whether or not we see certification soon, I think will depend largely on how long the pandemic lasts. I think what we're probably more likely to see, and we've seen it off airport in restaurants, for example, is that airports will market, right? If there's kind of standardization and a norm around a certification, then it may not be required, but it could be marketed as an upsell that we meet certain standards. So I think that may be, you may start to see that, maybe much further down the line as we get standardization on, what cleaning programs should be followed. I think there's a lot of, I think there's a lack of standardization around that around the world today, but I think as things standardize, certainly from a data capture standpoint, the data is there to prove whether the work was done or not. But I think it'll take time before we get to a required type certification, but very, very good question. And of course, we would love to see things go that route.
Cool. Thanks, Doug. Just in between, we started a small poll, and in line with today's webinar, it would be great if you also give us your feedback so that from our side we can also advance for the next and upcoming webinars. Thanks. Going on with the questions, and Alex, I fully agree with you that happy or not, they definitely need a touchless solution, especially in times like these. Yeah, absolutely. There's one question from Anton Oosthuizen, again, for this time for all panelists. Self-service and touchless tech is notorious for slowing down processes, especially in ATI, where a large percentage of PAX are first-time flyers. Also, touchless AI must make use of pauses to ensure that movement were intentional. What is being done to mitigate this risk?
I can comment on that, and maybe I'm not sure if I want to add.
That was what I was hoping for.
Yeah, hi Anton, a long time. Hope you're keeping well. Yeah, good question. I think it depends on the process. So some processes are slower using self-service and others are not. So check-in, for example, can be slower using a kiosk, but kiosks are cheap and a human at a check-in desk is expensive. So you can just put in more check-in desks, for example, and speed up the process that way. In terms of touchless, again, what we found, and I'll answer your other question as well about the mobile phone, but in terms of touchless, what we found is for straightforward touchless with a few questions and a simple enough interface, it's quite quick. Yes, it's a little slower than touching a screen, but the difference isn't significant. And usually for fairly fast transactions, the delay really is getting up to the device and going on to the next part of the journey. If you look at maybe bag drop, for example, where you're dropping off the bag, doing the tagging process and so on, that's a longer part of the process than interacting with the screen as well, for example. But I guess to your other question, which was why is there some resistance to using your mobile phone? What we do see is for more complex transactions on a touchless device, there will be a need to move to the mobile phone. So already, as I said, I think there's going to be a strong move to check-in. But if you could imagine, for example, if you have to type in your name and address on a system using touchless and picking out all those the characters on a virtual keyboard, that would be quite tedious. So we do see that kind of hybrid approach towards using your mobile phone for certain transactions, maybe even longer transactions, certainly for payment. And then for the more straightforward transactions, the head movement detection is relatively quick. And I guess to answer your question about why were some people resistant, I guess, to using their mobile phone, I think it comes down to a hassle factor. For you to go up to the device, you have to go to pull up your mobile phone, you have to go to the app or to the web page and enter the information. It's as quick and easy just to walk up to the device and do the head movement detection and enter the answers in that way. What we had found was when there's a bit of a queue or a backlog for people to use the device and they're waiting to use it, then they might as well get their phone out and do that process in advance. So being in front of the kiosk is quicker. But if there's no one in the queue, then they just go ahead and don't bother using the mobile phone.
All right, thanks, Bob. One more question for you, René, from Roland Visser. Thanks, René, for the very clear overview graphics. What, according to you, are the biometric technology solutions with the highest potential to adapt airports to new and anticipated ICAO health guidelines?
Thank you for the question. Good question. As a basis, I think a biometric, the adoption of biometrics, and then in particular facial biometrics, what airports are trialing with now and implementing now, I think as a basis is already a rather health conscious solution, of course, because a checkpoint with biometrics works from a distance, and you don't need to have any interaction with airport staff. So from that sense, a biometric solution is already a very good step to having a health and clean environment. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, if you have a managed self-sovereign identity, or if you can control your own ID, that includes your biometrics, but you can also it can also include your, for example, your vaccinations, your entire record of your vaccinations. Then you could also process this. You could forward this to the airport, which will also, or the airport stakeholder, the stakeholder in your trip that needs to check this. Then you can, you will also have a better status of your healthiness, and you know that all the people that are going into a flight all have been vaccinated or don't have any disease. They're not carrying any diseases. So in that sense, it will be a good solution.
All right, thanks, René. You can directly stay on. There is one more question from Miguel Sanchez Jimenez. First of all, thank you all for this interesting webinar. The question is, which are the mid-term and long-term benefits for moving the baggage handling system out of the terminal building? How to move the on-site checked baggage there?
Yeah, that's part of the package to redesign the check-in. If you move away bags out of the departure hall, of course it clears up space over there, and this is more on the longer term. And it can you can have, for example, a baggage factory. It's of course it's on the site and it's close to a terminal building. But it's separate from the terminal layout. Normally, a baggage handling system below or in a design of a terminal building is rather obstructing many possibilities in your building. For example, if you need expansion, it's very important that expansion is taken into account in your terminal building, and if it's not taken into account, then it's often very difficult to add an additional check-in line or anything inside your terminal building. So expansion could also take place, for example, outside the terminal building in a baggage facility that's on site but remote from the terminal. So it's kind of it's more a development solution than a COVID solution, but we think this could be a development that happens more often in the future and might change, be a small change in the DNA of an airport.
Yeah, understood. Last but not least, one more question from Alex. for you, René. On slide 11, you mentioned biometric and biometric passports. Who maintains or governs the individual data? What security measures are taking place?
Yeah, that's question is posed to me. Of course, this is depending on the solution where you are in the world. In the US, it's different. There, it's managed by the TSA, your biometric data, and in other places, it really depends. So, for example, in seamless flow or OneID solutions, very often the airport themselves are keeping the data for a certain amount of time, maybe 24 hours or something, and after that it will be deleted. It all depends on the consent. Mostly, if the system is designed properly, according to, for example, privacy by design, then the consent will be requested to the passenger for each use of his data. So in a passenger trip, if you have like 5 steps to do, passport check and boarding and presenting your boarding card, every step your consent will be requested. And if you give consent, then your data privacy is guaranteed. So the solutions are different. Sometimes it's stored at an airport, and in some occasions. And for the future solutions, that's something that's being worked on. And the ICAO is working on the digital travel credentials, and that's quite a promising solution. And then this works with probably is going to work with a blockchain. And then you are managing your own data, and your data is distributed over I know you keep your data, but the key to the data is distributed over the nodes of a blockchain. So that would be a very secure solution. And this is very premature status now, but I believe that potentially is a good technology that's very promising for the future.
All right. Thanks a lot. There are 2 more questions. So I would say, keeping the time in mind, I will have one more question from Piotr Krajewski. For the other one, this will definitely be also answered, but I guess René, you will get back to know via email or via the in-house chat. Okay, thanks. So the question from Piotr is, biometric single points seem very interesting solution. As they are presented by NACO, they provide an extra space gained for a benefit of other functions for airside. However, this is a OND scenario as presented on the slide. What about hub and transfer flows?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a very good question. Indeed. For hub and transfer flows, you would require there are different opportunities. If the world around us is going to adopt the biometric identity, and airports are going to share, for example, the data of the passenger, then upon arrival, or upon a transfer location, that data could be used for the trip. It's also, you could also think about airlines or groups like SkyTeam or something that they share, and that they have common platforms that can share this kind of data. And otherwise, indeed, people would have to enroll upon arrival at an airport, or should enroll separately on a program, or still have to go through the traditional process. So there will be also a period of time, or maybe it will always remain, that people are able to opt out of the procedure and still go through the traditional way of processing.
All right. Brilliant. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, René. You really spurred some interest from the crowd, but also Bob, Doug, great contributions. Was very interesting to also see your experience in Australia with the mobile phone and the head movements. And Doug, honestly, I think I've never thought about cleaning in an airport as much as I did this afternoon. So I will look at it differently next time I'm at an airport. Thanks a lot for this. Thanks everyone who participated or who joined us today for this webinar. You can see the contact details of everyone on this slide. So again, if you have further questions, if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to contact them. We will cut this video into several pieces for René, Bob, and Doug, so that you can then later on also have the specific videos. And we will share the links during probably tomorrow, latest on Friday with you. So with that, again, thanks a lot. Have a nice rest of your day from wherever you watch us today. And looking forward to see you again during our next webinar. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean William.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.